Hi guys. So today we're talking about self-love and intimacy. So I guess what I want to know is what is intimacy like to everyone? Like what is everyone's definition of intimacy?
Well, I can't think of a clear definition, like, maybe one sentence, but I just think when I think of intimacy, I just think of key words. So one of the biggest words is relationships, the relationships that you have, not just only with your like partner or significant other, the relationship that you have with your maybe close inner circle, and most importantly, the relationship that you have with yourself. I think self-love is something that's been overlooked for numerous years, not understood by many people, but it's really coming to the surface now. There's a big spotlight on self-love and self-care and things like that. So yeah, those words come to me when I think of intimacy.
I think intimacy also means different things to different people. Some people will categorize it as like sex with a partner or like cuddling, that kind of thing. And then other people will be like, actually, intimacy is when I have those self-care Sundays in the bathtub, that kind of thing. I think it kind of varies. And also it varies depending on your mood, I guess. At least it does for me.
You say sex with a partner. Is sex with like a stranger still classified as intimacy?
I think it
Depends
depends
on
on
your
the
definition.
person. Yeah.
So would you guys classify it as intimacy? Like, I'm being intimate by having a one night stand?
Personally, no. Because
Yeah.
for me, I feel like intimacy comes with connection. And I think a one night stand, someone you don't know, there's a lustful connection, but nothing deeper. And I think intimacy is, for me personally, from a deeper place.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
sex for me is not intimacy, they're separate. You can combine them, but it's not necessarily that all the time.
Mm. Okay. So then, okay, so if we classify sex as that, then what are the ways you would kind of show you're being intimate with a person or being intimate with yourself? What's the language?
I think with a person, I would more provide them acts of service. So I like to do nice things to people I care about. They need help with something, etc. But personally, I prefer like someone to, if it's a partner, or even if I'm struggling and having a bad day, like giving me a cuddle goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Or just giving me a pat and saying it's going to be okay goes a long way. And then I think now at this point in life, I've learned like the combination of self-love and intimacy, like sometimes put on a hair mask and watch TV and relax, and that's an intimate moment with myself, and I enjoy that alone time.
I think for me, intimacy with my partner is when we're just in a space together but not really saying anything. I think that feels like the most intimate times. But when I'm by myself, I also think that, like you were saying with the hair mask, I think it's kind of when I'm like sitting with my thoughts with a wine watching TV, or if I'm sitting and reading a book, like you don't realize it in the moment, but afterwards you're like, actually, that was a really good period of time where you're just there with yourself and you don't really need any like external influences.
It's quality time.
That's
With
exactly it.
yourself, really
Yeah.
focusing and giving yourself that attention on your body, on your mind, whatever it needs to be on that particular day. And then, yeah, with your partner, just, there's times when you're together, you might be doing stuff, but are you really focusing? Are you really, connecting with that individual? Like sometimes what me and my partner do, we have a box, a literal box, and we put our phones in the box. And that's when we're having quality time. We might watch something. We might, I don't know, we might just talk to each other. I think one of the most recent real connections I think we had was when we had a power cut, and there were no distractions, and your phone's already on 50%, and we're using it for a torch, and there really isn't no using phones. And it was just nice that we were able to connect, and we were able to just enjoy each other's company in its rawest form, because there was nothing else to do, and we had a great time. And I think that was one of our most recent nicest experiences. We've been to dinners, we've gone out to places, but that is very memorable for me. Yeah, and I think I would classify that as a very intimate moment.
That is super cute, by the way. Like, I love that you
Yeah,
have
I
a
really like
box.
that. That is so
Yeah,
sweet.
and then
It's so
like,
needed though. Sometimes don't you find yourself like, you've put something on the TV to watch, but you're scrolling on your phone. You can't even like
Mm.
take 2 seconds to watch whatever this show is and just detach yourself from the texting and the social media, the mindless scrolling and taking in so
mindless
much.
scrolling. I love it.
Yeah,
Literally.
technology is a big distraction. Definitely is a big distraction. Sometimes, just putting all of that stuff away.
And that
Really
hinders your
helps.
self-love. When you're
Mm.
sat on your sofa eating ice cream and some woman on Instagram's done 20 sit-ups and your stomach's rolling over your jean, you're feeling like, ooh.
That's good for her. I'm doing what's good for me. I love
No, good for her, but inside I'm like, I should probably put this down. Like, well done. You've inspired me not to probably go and get another spoon.
See, I'm the opposite. I'll be watching her and I'll be like, yeah, you go, girl. And I'm still going to be
Go,
eating my
girl.
ice cream. I'll be like, yes, you go, girl. You're doing well, but I'm still going to eat my ice cream. You do what works for you, in all honesty.
But then, speaking of what works for you, how did you identify what worked for you?
Do you know what it was? I feel like it wasn't until I had my son that I really began to realize the sort of stuff that works for me, and that I really went on the journey of self-love and exploration, if that makes sense. Like exploring, it took me having my son, in all honesty. That's what it took for me to actually just just figure things out for myself, into even fitness wise as well. Like, I feel like if I hadn't have had my son, then I probably wouldn't have embarked on the fitness journey, and I probably wouldn't have lost weight. Well, I lost weight, but then I put it on during lockdown. But then even now, I'm still smaller than I was before I had my son. So I feel that
What
having
was
him
it about having
definitely.
him that drove you to kind of explore these things?
You want to be a better person, not just for you, but for your child. You want to be a good example to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted it to be that when my son looks at me, I'm someone that he looks up to. When he's talking about his mum, I want it to be in such a positive light. And I knew that in order for that to happen, that I actually needed to work on myself and just really prioritize what works for me and just figure out what exactly works for me. And that's why I say he's my biggest blessing, because I feel like if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be on this path that I'm on now, and the path that I've been on since I've had him. He's literally been not just the biggest blessing, but the biggest eye-opener for me as well. He's taught me so much about myself, to love myself. Like, having a child that changes your body completely. Even though I'm smaller now than I was before I had my son, my body is not what it used to be. And that's definitely been a journey of acceptance. And I think before I would be like, oh, I wish I looked like that. But then now I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, you know what? My body may not be as tight in areas where it was before, but this body produced an amazing human being who is the light of my world. So I'll take that any day. And if anyone would have told me that I would have felt this way a good couple of years ago, or even when I was pregnant, I probably would have been like, nah, that's not possible. But yeah, being on this journey with him, it really has just taught me a lot, and I try my hardest not to compare myself to the people that I see on Instagram or the people that have quick snapbacks, because everyone's journey and experience is different.
You raise a good point about people looking up to you and, having a child and how that's changed your outlook. And I think as a young Black woman, I found myself in a position where there are other younger Black women who are also looking up to me, and in ways that I just didn't really realize, and that really changed my outlook on things. So I have one of my sister's godchildren, known her all her life. She's 9 years old, and she comes to our house, quite often. And I always talk to her. From a young age, I've always talked to her and just ask her, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's new with you? Really checking in, not from a auntie just asking generically. I'm actually genuinely interested to know what's going on in your head and your life. And it wasn't until recently where she actually shared something that was quite evidence that she's going through life changes now, like beginning of puberty and those sort of things, where she actually said, I enjoy our chats. And I think it's a big thing. It shows that, what I'm doing is effective, that yes, I am I'm an influence in a young person's life, and that I could do the same for so many other children, and that's not even my child yet. I think it's nice to have somebody outside of your direct sort of dependence, where you can be that person, especially within the community, especially when our demographic is so niche and so only we can really understand and relate, in a sense. And then if you think about the older generations, that didn't happen. I would have loved to have somebody like that who was outside of my parents, who would have been that person for me. I think it would have made the world of difference in my life. And I'm sure that if they had the same too, things would have been a lot different. But that the generational differences are very evident.
I think one of the reasons for that was because the older generation were taught to keep everything within the household. Mm-hmm. So they didn't, or maybe they probably didn't feel like they could speak to someone outside their household, because they were always taught that what happens in a house stays in a house. If you want to talk to someone, you talk to your family. If you can't talk to your family, well, then you just leave it at that. Mm-hmm. But you don't take what happens inside a house outside a house.
Yeah. And some feelings weren't valid as well. Like some things were not a talking point. Things that we have conversations about. Like I've never heard my mum talk at length about her weight. Like, or just stuff that for us is very, health, fitness, travel. Like, it's not saying she didn't do these things. They just weren't extensive parts of her dialogue. They were focused on very different things, and some things were just not relevant. So they're not going to ask you about it because it just shouldn't be an issue.
Also, I think we're now in a time where there is more acceptance of bodies that look like ours. If you think about like the older generation, I remember going back to Trinidad and seeing my granny or my grandpa, and they'd be like, you get fat. And that's like the first thing they would say to you. And that's not about body positivity. That was them being like, you need to put all the sausages and chips away, like stop eating.
To be fair, now they just say it behind your back when you leave. They still say it.
But I respect that a lot more.
I don't really think it's a bad thing. They're not really saying it all the time as a bad thing. So
no, it's more of a, they've noticed.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's more of like an acknowledgement. But so not necessarily a bad thing, but if you get that all the time when you're younger, like every time like you get fat, you look big, this, you're not going to be as comfortable in your body. But now that we're in a time with Instagram and you see women of all body shapes and women like parading their bodies, I guess, like the Megans, the Nikkis, maybe Nikki, but you know what I mean, like those kinds of exactly, but like them showing their body and being really proud of it. I think that helps with the whole self-love thing, because so many more women can be like, actually I look like that and I feel great.
I just feel like for me, self-love wise, I just felt so many years, I spent so many years trying to change myself. And it's like a conversation I had with a friend this weekend, because we've known each other for like 12 years and we've done every single diet we have done. And I've realized self-love for me is about a healthy lifestyle. I love to exercise and I feel better when I nourish myself better. But in the same respect, I can't punish myself to get myself to be something that I'm not going to get to. It's about being, like I've learned with age, I just want to be the best version of myself. It doesn't mean I want to let myself go and eat cheese all day, but it doesn't mean I'm going to stress myself out if I do have a day like that. It's like that's come with age, rather than trying to force something and sort of punishing yourself when you maybe don't do it the way it should be done. It's more a place of acceptance of bettering what you have.
the balance is really key for within yourself, and others. I think, yeah, that plays a big part. And I think, as you said, Olive, just the keeping it within the house, the game's changed, everything's changed now, and you know, it's breaking generational curses. And I think even other generations are realizing that I'm part of something that's not great and I want to change. I do think that some older people, they do struggle to try and to adapt and change to what is now deemed as socially acceptable. And they really want to break out of a mold that they've lived in for maybe 40, 50 years, and they really struggle. And I think there should be more of an effort to help those, because it's not too late. They're not lost souls. Just because we've grasped it and, you know, we're going ahead with it fine with the next generation, it doesn't mean the elders shouldn't be looked after as well. But then, speaking of the body part, what's your favorite body part of yourself? Like, not others. I mean, of others. Yeah, feel free.
You know
Keep it
what?
PG.
I'm going to actually say my bum, and this is something that has taken me a long time to actually embrace. And I think the reason being that I didn't like the way guys would just look at my bum and they'd be like, check out that back off. So it would make me feel a certain way, and it made me feel insecure. But then, I don't know, it's just like something like clicked overnight, and I was just like, you know, yeah, I really like my bum. Like, you know, I like the shape of it. I like that it's firm. Like, I really like it. And it's just like, you know, I never thought that I would actually say today that was my favorite body part, but it actually is. And I feel like that's growth for me. It's like, I think because of the way guys would just like, you know, comment on it, it made me feel ashamed of having a bum. Whereas, you know, I should have been embracing it, and now I actually do embrace it.
I feel like 10 years ago I would have said my boobs, because I feel like that's what men most liked about me. And so for me, that was my best attribute. But now I would actually say my legs, because they're what I most like about me in terms of clothing and what I want to wear and what I want to buy. Whereas my boobs now kind of get in the way. Now I'm a bit older, it's like, you know, fashion-wise, they could use a shrinkage.
I'm so with you. I was going to say the exact same thing. Like, I for sure would have gone for boobs, because it's just like the first thing that you see about me, or what I thought was the first thing. And I would always used to hide my legs. Like, I didn't like them. I always thought that I was a bigger girl, so that no one really needed to see my legs. But now I'm always in a skirt, always in a short. I mean, short in the UK is still quite questionable for me, but I show them off a lot more now. And yeah, I definitely think they're one of my best features.
I hear you on the I used to think this and now that, and yeah, we always kind of think about what others like about us, and that shapes what we like about ourselves. But I just love my skin. I literally just love the skin that I'm in. I love my skin tone. I think it's not light and it's not dark. It's just in the middle, and it's just part of that balance. It's just, and the glow. And when you talk about things that you'd like to show off about yourself, you know me, I love the skin out when appropriate, of course. But yeah, it makes me feel very confident and very, yeah, body positivity in its highest form.
It's weird to think about it in terms of changes, because I feel like with self-love as well, you need less validation. Like, you don't need someone to tell you what they think's attractive about you or what they think is great about you. Like, it sounds really silly, but like, I journal and I write things about myself. I'm like, your hair's very shiny today, have a blessed day. Like, and I tell myself, or if I'm having a bad day, I talk to myself and I say, do you know what, it's not that bad, get over yourself, and give myself a grip. And that's something I wouldn't have done before, because I would have felt like an idiot and would have felt like, no, I need that compliment to come from someone else for it to be true. No, now it's like, if I feel there's something good about me, I'll appreciate myself.
And I think that just shows growth as well, as I feel that in our 20s, we relied on others to give us that validation. Whereas now, as we're getting older, we realize that, you know what, that's coming within ourselves, and we're discovering it for ourselves as well, which is definitely growth.
Well,
So,
sorry, is there anything that you would say to yourself, to you at 20 years old, like when we first at university, like joining, meeting everyone, what is the one piece of advice you would give yourself about
Stay
your
away
self-love,
from
body, intimacy, anything?
Where's this going, Ola?
Yeah.
maybe 3 words, you know, not a whole.
She's got a diatribe she would give. Let me tell you.
3 words, yeah. 3.
Number 1, no tequila rosé.
you're amazing as you are. That's what I would tell myself. Yeah.
I would say stop worrying. I used to worry in my 20s about everything. And it's like now when you speak to like girls in their 20s, I'm like, just calm down. It all comes together. Like you're stressing yourself out for these 10 years because you feel like you've got to fit everything in and make everything perfect. And it's really not going to be. Like, that's the truth. It's not going to, it might end up better or worse than what you expected, but it's going to go the way it's meant to. Like, I would have just said to myself, stop worrying and trying to control yourself and control situations and control everything. Just set yourself your targets, your goals, and work towards them without stressing yourself up so much about what might not be going at the speed you want it to, or things that come out of nowhere.
I think for me, mine would be listen to myself more and know that validation can only come from me. How I feel about myself is the most important thing. It doesn't matter what I think other people are thinking of me, or whether or not they are even thinking of me. I just need to, when I was in my 20s, I spent so much of my time really thinking about everyone else and having all of these like external influences. But now that I'm older, I'm like, I don't give a beep about what people say. Yeah.
That's not the word you usually say, Joelyn.
I mean, listen.
We're trying to keep it PG.
No, I would just say to know your worth. Know your worth and believe in your source. It's something I would have told myself 10 years ago. It's something that I still tell myself today. 10 years ago, I think just really, I think confidence and self-love is a big driver for yourself in terms of pushing and believing and, you know, flourishing in life. And if you believe in yourself and you have that know your self-worth, that will really help you help accelerate yourself in terms of doing whatever it is, your goals, your understanding your own validation, all those things. It would be such a big boost, which only you can give yourself. And I still tell myself that now. I tell others that, and I really preach it, but then there's comes a time when you need to practice what you preach. And I think that's what I would say to myself more so now as well, is practice what you preach. Because it's always easier to say, but then when you need to do it yourself, it's a bit of a, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to put in place.
Yeah.
I feel like it's
really of yourself.
True. Until you kind of know yourself and love yourself, you can't also communicate to others what you want from them, whether that's like friends or relationships.
But I feel like one of the reasons why it is harder to actually follow it yourself is because we're our biggest critics. So it's a lot easier for us to like give out the advice to our friends and family, but because we see what they don't see in themselves. However, we're our biggest critics, so it definitely is a lot harder, and it is something that we probably should work on, and even I need to work on it as well.
And how do you communicate what you want from like men?
Why do you have to be men?
Because we're all into boys here, you know.
We are here.
Unless you're into girls or a bit of both. If so, we can talk about that. I've got time.
Not today, sorry.
Speaking of which, when did everyone realize that they liked boys? Like, at what age would you be like, oh, he is cute?
I was gonna say birth.
What boy were you seeing at birth?
You know,
Right.
things, you know?
I had my first crush. I remember being like 5 or 6, and there was a guy called Nathan in school, and like everybody thought he was hot. He was like the thing of the primary school.
What did he look
And
like?
he was like light skinned with green eyes. That era, 90s era we were in.
Very pretty, Ricky.
Yeah. Now I like him dark and lovely, but back then, and he was like a bit naughty. He was a bit of a naughty child, and I was the opposite. I was like a prefect, I was like a good girl. And now I think back, like my school best friend at the time, he would always chase me and kiss Chase, and he obviously had a crush on me, but I was too busy looking over there at this guy. Standard behaviour. It's not change of age. Honestly, do better.
What did your friend look like? Your best friend who was chasing you?
He looks like the kind of guys I would say I would like now. Like he's grown up into like a tall, dark, handsome man, Jamaican.
Oh, yeah,
Dreadlocks?
No dreadlocks. Not this week.
I love that for you. I love that so much.
It's funny, like, when I think about it, one of my earliest crushes was somebody who will probably fit that same description. And I think with a lot of black girls, that was a very common theme, like that light and bright.
Definitely, yeah. My first crush was a mixed race guy in primary school. Definitely, yeah.
And why is that? And then when we say now, it's not something that we would go for per se. Not to say there's anything wrong with it,
It was what was popular at the time. And I do think in the last 10 years, there's been a massive transition about skin tone. And
yeah, I agree.
And now it's so positive. Everyone wants to scream that they're the darkest berry, in the tree. Like whereas let's face facts, people who grew up in a generation where people were bleaching, everyone had that auntie that came looking a bit fairer than fair to every gathering. And, if you were darker skinned, one of the first things a family member might comment on is like, oh, she's so dark and lovely, or oh, she's so light and beautiful. Not as if it's a good or a bad thing, but it was conversational. Whereas now I don't look at any of my godchildren and say, you're so dark and lovely. Like that's not a comment I'd make. And that's changed with time.
And I also as well, like I remember even me as well, because as a dark skin woman, growing up, I would stay out the sun. And I noticed a lot of my family members, they would do the same. They'll be like, under the shade, don't stay in the sun. But now that I'm seeing that, now that I'm older and the sun is out, I'm embracing it. I'm like, yes, I'm dark skinned. I don't care. I'm going to go in that sun and I'm going to get me even more melanin. Like I'm embracing it. I used to say that winter was my favorite season, but I don't actually think it was. I just said that because I was afraid of going in the sun, but now I'm happy to just go in the sun. I'm happy to have summer, and I'm happy to stay that out.
I'm not going to lie,
I don't think I would have had the confidence to say that. I think I would have the confidence to be in the sun.
I was going to say, it wasn't till uni that I found a massive focus on skin colour, because even though I'd have the odd family member in my family, so many different shades, like it was not a conversational like that. And at uni, it was very much like light skin girls, dark skin girls, mixed race girls, white girls. And it was like such a talking point for our generation in our early teens, early 20s. And I've never ever cared about my skin tone. Like it's never been an issue. It's something someone could insult me on. It just wouldn't affect me. But that's because of how I've been brought up. Whereas if you've been brought up and around you, it's different. And then I get why. When I went to uni, I realised I was like, oh, wow, this is like a major thing. Because there are some people that really hate the tone of their skin because of what they've been through. That's just not ever been my reality.
Yeah, it took me a long time to actually accept my skin tone, because I was just always pointed out as being like, too dark, or, that dark skin girl, so it took me definitely a while to come to terms and just be proud of what I actually am, and which is like, a beautiful dark skinned Black woman.
For sure.
Gosh, sure.
Also, you don't want to be fetishized for it either, because that's like the other way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, you're so exotic. Please, I'm not a fruit. I'm not like you.
I hate that word, exotic.
Exotic makes me want to
in a place. Oh gosh. Like I was some goddess roaming down the corridor. I was like, okay.
With a plate of pineapples, some exotic fruit.
Literally, I thought feeding grapes because, oh.
Would you guys ever be a sister wife? Because you know how it is,
I like to share.
like a polygamous relationship,
I don't
would
like
you
to
guys
share.
ever engage in
I like
this?
intimacy with one person at a time.
I barely
I
like to
see-
share with friends, let alone my nan.
I see the
Because you know
benefits
what?
of it. I do get it, because I
Yeah.
think you get different things from different people. But the way that I'm personally set up, I can't envision it. I would like
I'm the
to
same as
share
well.
my one person.
I'd like to have like a husband and then a male friend that maybe likes to do stuff that my husband doesn't like to do. Because
Yeah.
like, do you know what I mean? Not like that. I mean, like, say I like to go to a reggaeton concert. I've never really dated a man that's not Latino that's into that. So maybe if I had a male friend that would come to Daddy Yankee with me,
That's like, different friendship groups. That's fine. Not
Yeah.
the three of you are like my closest friends, and there's certain things I know I will go to one of you for, not the other, because it's just different parts of your personality, and it just makes the whole group dynamic work. And in a relationship, I guess there'll always be those things, but then does that mean you're not committed to the other person just because you're going to a concert with somebody else?
No, but I think if you've got like a connection, that's an intimate relationship, that's someone that's not your partner, there's certain things that are crossing the line. And I feel like if you've got you do in your relationship, because for every couple it's completely different.
Fair.
Yeah.
But do you feel like an emotional connection is crossing the line as well?
I would say, for me personally, I would say, like, if you're getting things emotionally from another person that you're not getting from me, and you're going to that person because you're not getting it from me, then that's inappropriate.
Yeah, to me that would be worse than sleeping with someone else, which I kind of understand in a polyamorous relationship. If you have your partner and then you have external partners who are people that you just sleep with, fine, go off, I kind of get it. But to me personally, I don't think I would be comfortable having a relationship with someone and knowing that they are sharing intimate details or intimacy in terms of like mental and that kind of stuff with someone else.
Your whole body, you share your whole body with the other person,
Well, guys, this has definitely been a good chat. Very interesting. I like the fact that we were able to like talk about broad like topics and just get like different point of views. So this has definitely been fun.
Part of the sisterhood.
Absolutely.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes.
I do want to find out more about what you guys do tell your partners though, so we'll have to circle back to that conversation one day.
wouldn't you like to know?
This has been great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.